Tetairoa McMillan led the wide receiver rookie class in fantasy points this year, but others also showed they could have a promising future in the NFL. We discuss the fantasy expectations for the 2025 wide receiver class on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcasting network. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
This week, we've been going through the rookie class of the 2025 class. So the season we just finally finished, and going through what they did this past year as a rookie and how we expect them to perform in 2026 and beyond. We already did quarterbacks and running backs. If you missed those episodes, go listen. Today will be wide receivers, and tomorrow will be the tight end class, which, by the way, is amazing. Very exciting tight end class. But let's talk about this wide receiver class. It's kind of underwhelming, but at the same time, there are a few guys here that offer really great potential. So Tetairoa McMillan, he was drafted by the Panthers, and he ended up being the wide receiver 25 in average scoring in half PPR. Emeka Egbuka started the year so strong. We thought like he was just going to be a superstar. He seemed like he had offensive player of the year like handed to him. And then it completely fell off there after the first like 5 weeks. So let's talk about McMillan first. I don't know how I see him increasing too much. It's my biggest issue, right? Because he's in the same offense. He's still going to be with Bryce Young. I just don't know if Bryce Young is capable of supporting a wide receiver one. And he's being drafted. I mean, right now his ranking is saying he's going to be drafted as a top 15 guy next year.
Yeah, we'll see if that's a little aggressive for sure. I mean, he does have a lot of physical talent, and you're right. The quarterback situation is something we have to consider. Then, for some reason, Jalen Coker won't go away as somebody that like Bryce Young likes to throw to in key situations, but they don't have a lot of other guys. Like, it's kind of a offense it's hard to put your finger on, right? Like, are they good at passing? Are they good at running? Are they really balanced? Do they know what they're doing? We don't know. And it's like you'll have occasional flashes from the tight end, whether it's Tommy Tremble or Jatavion Sanders will show up randomly. Then you'll have a third receiver do something. I think it was good that they moved on, from Adam Thielen last year in the middle, because that kind of showed they needed to go with the youth movement. I just wanted this passing game to be a lot about Coker and Sanders are the two guys that they involve. And then Tetairoa McMillan is the clear alpha. That's what I would like from this offense. And there were some games where they totally went nuts on the ground, and they were able to do that. The Rico Dowdle game against Cowboys and those type of games, right? So I'm not sure if we can get the passing volume we want. Unfortunately, the Panthers defense got good, and that was a problem. There were some guys that were making plays, Derek Brown and J.C. Horn, so they were keeping them in a lot of games. So then they were trying to put up garbage points, right? It was a grind here. But what we want is Bryce Young to compartmentalize his last months of the season and carry that over to a year. He was really good in the last months of his last 2 years. Let's put that together. McMillan, look, he would have that like 20 or 25-yard pass early in the game. And like, okay, you're going. Then it's like, oh, it's such a slow play to 70 yards and 6 catches. And it's like, when is he going to get the touchdown? So he's not the most dynamic offense, and he would have big numbers, I think, if he was, say, he was in the, I would say if you put him in the role of like Matthew Stafford, Devontae Adams receiver, this dude would have gone off big time, right? Or even put him with Jordan Love. He would have been just taking off. But you had Bryce Young, so there were some natural limitations there. And Emeka Egbuka, look, I think I still like McMillan right now better because there are a lot of variables I got to figure out. But if those variables go the right way for Egbuka, I think I'd much rather go in that direction. Because, again, you're right, everything's capped and there's no variables that are changing. The variables for the Buccaneers might actually improve the chances of Egbuka getting things done. Mike Evans being a free agent, Sterling Shepard being a free agent, Cade Otton. These are some key targets they had last year. Those guys could be all gone, and now you have Zach Robinson, who did really good work with Drake London in Atlanta. So all this NFC South talk for these receivers, I guess it's all crossing over. Canales came from Tampa, all this stuff. So it's all pretty close, and they all kind of mash together here.
I think what's really, really interesting about Egbuka and figuring out where you should take him next year. It's not like, yeah, they're changing OCs and maybe that'll be better with Zach Robinson. I will say Drake London had 2 amazing fantasy seasons under Zach Robinson, right? And you already brought up the guys who are leaving. There's targets around. We'll see if Mike Evans can come back. I don't think Mike Evans being back would be necessarily a bad thing, though. Like, I think it's helpful for these guys to have other weapons across from them. But I think the thing we need to figure out is, was his downfall due to that hamstring injury, right? Like, he suffers a hamstring injury in week 6. And that is exactly where it falls apart for Egbuka. I mean, weeks 1 through 5, he was on absolute fire. It was looking like you got a steal of the draft. He was scoring so many fantasy points every game. 22. This is half PPR. 22, 11, 12, 18, 28, right? Like, he was killing it. He had 5 touchdowns during that span, a lot of yards during that span. And then after that injury, it just completely falls apart. And it didn't have to do with his usage in the offense at all. I mean, he was still getting a ton of targets, 12, 9, 13, 9, 8, 8, 9, 7. The last 2 games of the season, they diminished because like just Baker and him couldn't connect. But it was like, was that hamstring the issue with them connecting? Because all of a sudden, Baker and him could not connect at all. Was it that slight difference of that hamstring injury that was slowing him down or messing with him that was making the impact? Because we both loved Egbuka coming out of college, right? And instantly he showed his talent. I don't think that's just a random coincidence that happened, that he was just so good the first 5 weeks and then he gets injured and falls apart. I do think Egbuka will be a better value than Tetairoa McMillan next year. McMillan right now is going as wide receiver 14 in consensus rankings, right around AJ Brown and Chris Olave and T. Higgins, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams. Well, you can get Egbuka at this moment. I mean, obviously no one's drafting right now, but Egbuka right now in consensus rankings all the way down at wide receiver 28. After guys like Mike Evans, where we don't know where he'll land, after Luther Burden, which I think is crazy, after Christian Watson, after Cortland Sutton, I think Egbuka might be a really, really good value because of that injury and how much he fell off.
Yeah, one thing the consensus rankings struggle with a lot is taking account for all the variables. And I'm going to keep throwing out that word, variables, because variables are what are going to create, quote, change in someone's value, right? Mm-hmm. And you look at these values from last year. Wide receiver 25, Egbuka, wide receiver 30. So now we're like, that's negligible, right? 5 spots. And if you look, some of their numbers were eerily similar, right? Targets and usage and all that and what was going on. They just did it in different ways, where Tet McMillan was kind of up and down, but he kind of stayed in the middle, right? There was a mean where he was hitting. Well, Egbuka was way up and then way down, and then it all met in the middle. So when you look at that, I mean, I think Josh Griswold also was dismissed because there were some things that were maybe getting stale about that Buccaneers passing offense. And now it's interesting that I think he went on to the Eagles, so we'll see how that works out. But then as this situation emerges, yeah, Zach Robinson's a pretty good guy. And where did he come from before Atlanta? The Rams. And what did he do last year? It's like, who are my 2 best targets? They're Kyle Pitts and Drake London. So he's going to be like, who are my 2 best targets? Look, I don't think they're going to re-sign Cade Otton. Sterling Shepard is ancient, so he's probably gone. Chris Godwin is barely hanging on. I think they'll bring back Evans. And like you said, it's not the worst thing to have Mike Evans still the threat of him to worry about.
I think it's better because Evans is a big target guy.
Yeah. So you want him out there. And I think that I don't see Mike Evans playing for another team. I think he either comes back on a 1-year deal or he retires. And he just says, I'm done with this. My streak ended. I'm done. I don't think he's going to retire, but I think he will stay in Tampa versus play for someone else. So he's much like the Travis Kelce of tight ends in free agency. Do not see him playing for another team. Could see him hanging up before he does that. So we'll have that combination, and that'll be good. Evans is kind of the Davante Adams of this group, the big dude that scores. and maybe Egbuka can be the Puka-Nickel. Okay, let's not get ahead of ourselves. But he has that kind of ability. He's a first-round pick. He came where we saw Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and Jackson Smith-Njigba. Not quite Marvin Harrison Jr. yet, but Egbuka is more like those first veteran guys I mentioned that can really produce here. So I'm excited to see what happens. But you're right. I think right now Egbuka is the much better value. McMillan is definitely a strong. I mean, that's jumping him 10 spots for no reason. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
We're dropping Egbuka all the way down to like deep wide receiver 3-4 territory. Makes zero sense. So go with what's more logical based on where they were last year.
I'm going to love Egbuka's value this year if it stays anywhere close to this. That's for sure. And McMillan, I'm not going to hate the value, but I'm probably not going to be reaching for that. I'm not going to be wanting him on my team at that value. Let's get into the next group of guys. We got Travis Hunter and Luther Burden, two harder guys to figure out where we're going to want to take him next year, especially Hunter, because the last time we saw him healthy, he balled out. But can he do it again? We'll get into that right after a quick break.
All right, this episode, Locked On Fantasy Football, is brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect with them online. They handle everything for you, from W-2s to self-employed forms, and work to get you every deduction. It's a huge time saver, and it's going to give you real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling your taxes for you. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for only $150 all in. That's only $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. That's the end of this month. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. All right, we will continue the show and some wide receivers that we're trying to figure out where they land here in year 2 after some disappointing rookie season. We'll get into that moment. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already done this, go check out our new Everyday Archive. It's a good way to support the show. Access to ad-free audio feed for our show, Locked On Fantasy Football. And it works with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, every other major podcast app. And this is really great because you can connect with the show all season long. And so there's going to be a lot of changes, news you have to keep up with. We're going to be here all year long. Not a lot of fantasy podcasts. We're going to give you that here. We're working all throughout the offseason to help you dominate your league, thinking ahead, getting you thinking about what you need to do to dominate your leagues, and working on dynasty, keeper leagues. We're getting ahead of that for you too. And Devi, all these type of things that we're going to bring you here that you need to know when you're making out those rosters, those drafts, those auctions, all that good stuff. So stick with us. Join the Everyday Club. You can get to those Discord access features, as well as really connecting with us all off-season long, all the way through big draft time. You can get our draft advice. We can be your extra experts to help you while you're on the clock. So just go to lockedonfantasyfootball.supercast.com. It's only $5 a month or $50 for the whole year to do that. So please support the show and check it out again. It's lockedonfantasyfootball.com or .supercast.com is where you'll find it, and check the show notes to learn more how to click and sign up. All right, it is time to continue and looking at some other wide receivers that weren't as exciting this season. Travis Hunter, look, they tried to put him on the other side. He had a 100-yard game. Of course, it came overseas. He did have his best game in their Europe game. So he did really well in that, had the 100-yard game, and then he got hurt. And then he was done for the year. And then they went out and traded for Jacoby Myers. And then Parker Washington became their top receiver overall. And then Brian Thomas Jr. got healthy and started to get in on the action. And then Brenton Strange got healthy and was back in the action. Why I'm saying all these things in my annoying tone is that I am not going with Travis Hunter in fantasy this year. Like, it's hard. How can you go for him? They're not losing any of these guys. Washington, Thomas, and Myers got an extension, right? They're locking him up. You got Strange. He's a young playmaker. Like, while he was out, I mean, Trevor Lawrence really shot up and had his MVP run and had his great fantasy run into the top 10 without Travis Hunter. So, look, I know that we're going to try to get cute and we're like, okay, he's a two-way player. We're going to do all that stuff. I still think that's fine, but I think it'd be crazy if the Jaguars don't make him a 75-25 quarterback wide receiver. So, I don't know. It seems odd, right? Why would you invest in Myers? Go make that trade while he was out. Then Myers has a good year. Then Washington emerges. Like, why would you do all this stuff if you're going to be there? So I think I'm out. I don't think I could think about drafting Travis Hunter. Look, that might change. They might have different plans with their offense, but variables, everything's the same. Grant Udinski's there. Liam Cohen's there. Why would they change what they did when it was so successful down the stretch? And look, Washington really balled out. I think we were thinking, hey, is he just a little slot dude? But he was fantastic down the stretch. So I think they have three better receivers and a tight end. I don't know how they're going to get Hunter on the field to produce anything that I want to invest in fantasy.
See, I think Parker Washington only broke out because of the Travis Hunter injury. I think they're starting to get Hunter way more involved, right? The last 2 weeks of him being healthy, he played 80% of snaps and then 87% of the snaps. I think they decided they wanted to use him more as a wide receiver. He got 14 targets in that last game, a big game with 101 yards and a touchdown. Unfortunately, he did get injured in the practice before that next game. Now, it was a torn LCL late in October. He had surgery early-ish November, and it's a 6-month full recovery type of injury. So he should be plenty ready to go by training camp. This is my thing. I get it. There's a lot of weapons there. Jacoby Myers being signed there could be a thing. I actually think that Brian Thomas Jr. could fully be traded this offseason.
There's a reason.
And I think them not trading him would actually be pretty stupid because he clearly doesn't fit in the Liam Cohen system, right? We saw him be able to ball out as that deep ball threat, even as that main guy in the system with them in 2024, it was working. Like he can be a good wide receiver. We've seen it, but he clearly does not work in the Liam Cohen system. Trying to go over the middle, it doesn't fit. I still think they can get pretty good draft capital from Brian Thomas as long as they trade him this year before having another bad year. So I think it would be stupid of them not to trade him, not to get the draft capital. Thomas can go somewhere else and ball out. They can get the draft capital. And then Travis Hunter will have a much bigger opportunity, right, in this offense. And I do think Parker Washington is just the guy that comes in when there's other injuries. So I'm not worried about Parker Washington. I do think he's a solid player. But I think Hunter can be a really sneaky good value. I mean, right now he's so low in consensus rankings. That's going to change by the time we get a few months from now. Right now he's sitting at wide receiver 45 behind Parker Washington himself, Quentin Johnson, Jordan Addison, like Michael Wilson and Ricky Pearsall and Stephon Diggs. Like that will change. He will increase by quite a lot. But as long as he stays as a borderline wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 cost, I think I'm actually going to be in on Travis Hunter this upcoming year.
Yeah, I think I have to only consider this if Thomas is gone. Like, look, Parker Washington, we want to dump on this dude, but he was really good. And the quarterback trusts him a lot. And that's the biggest thing is like Trevor Lawrence needs some trusted dudes. And he may not trust Brian Thomas as much. He'd probably trust the heck out of Myers, Washington. Don't forget Brenton Strange. But you do bring up an important variable here, right? If that happens, that changes the game. But I'm just a little bit worried. Here's the flip side of that. He's had an injury, right? Was it too much to take on? Does he need to focus on one side of the ball as he's trying to get healthy? I don't know. Do the Jaguars actually need him a lot more where they struggled at cornerback, right? I mean, do they need him there? Like, it'd be odd to not put him at a position of weakness and like add him to a position of strength unless that strength was gone and Thomas was not there and they needed to have that third target to maintain here for Trevor Lawrence. So this is going to be something we're going to watch all season long. Mm-hmm. Hopefully the beat reporters will come through, tell us how many reps or what he's planning to do, what his status is, his health, how much they want to maybe change what they want to do, but they got to figure it out. I'm just going to say this. It's so odd that he basically was a non-factor when they got hot and went to the playoffs and were on the verge of doing something. Like, that's so odd. They could make this a bad draft pick overall, like giving up the 2 picks for the Browns and all
Yeah.
that. Like it'd be a bad draft pick and they still could be fine, which is bizarre. But they got to figure out what they're doing with Travis Hunter because, again, you invest in a talent like that, you better know what you're doing with him. And again, we'll see. I think we'll get a better idea of that. Now, Luther Burden is an interesting case here. Again, they need to know what they're doing with him. He's a second-round pick, wide receiver 58 on average as a rookie. Look, I've said he could be Ayomanor St. Brown in the Ben Johnson offense, a slot guy that is all over the field and becomes a go-to guy. His main guy that kept it, I don't know why it took him so long to displace Olamide Zaccheaus as the slot of choice, but Zaccheaus is a journeyman. He is a free agent. Now, the question is, much like I was worried about him last year and Egbuka going in before all those injuries happened, can he get enough targets if it doesn't happen where DJ Moore is moved? I mean, Colson Loveland was the guy that Caleb Williams had only eyes for down the stretch. Early in the season, it was Rome Odunze. Burden was only the guy in between a few times, like DJ Moore and him would fickle their games, right? It would be like, okay, early in the season, where's Odunze? Where's Odunze? Where's Odunze? Mm-hmm. Late in the season, where's Loveland? Where's Loveland? Where's Loveland? So Caleb Williams was obsessed with his fellow first-round picks. DJ Moore is like, we'll throw to you when you have a good matchup and you're open. Burden, the slot is a good matchup. That's where we're going to throw. So that's my only question with Burden. I think he's a good player, but to really get his value, like you said, with Thomas leaving for Hunter, I think Moore is the guy that needs to go. I don't think they'll move Odunze as a first-round pick, but I think Moore needs to go. And then we might be seeing these 3 guys really produce, much like we saw that trio produce in Jacksonville for Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, if DJ Moore goes, I'll definitely be much more interested in Burden. Right now, I have zero desire. I mean, if you're looking at consensus rankings for 2026 right now, by far the most confusing ranking has to be Burden at wide receiver 23. I don't understand it at all. We even got to see him late last year without Rome Odunze, so he should have stepped into that role. He got more playing time, but he had one good fantasy performance throughout that time. Another one, solid one, but the rest, like, pretty much non-existent still. So I didn't love Burden coming out of school. I didn't love the skill set for him to transition to the NFL with all the yards after catch that he did in college. I don't know. Like, if Moore leaves, I think he becomes an interesting choice. But then that's what I'm even saying, is wide receiver still too strong? Wide receiver 23 is still too strong for him if DJ Moore were to leave. I would be considering it, but still might be too rich. And if DJ Moore is still there, then absolutely not. But we will be talking about Colson Loveland tomorrow. And I have a feeling we're both very, very high on him. But let's talk about these other wide receivers in this 2025 draft class. We got Matthew Golden and Jayden Higgins and Jaylin Noel, and then the Titans duo. So we'll get into all of that and guys that we might be interested in taking late in drafts right after a quick break. The winter games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the winter games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. You can bet on anything from curling to speed skating to hockey. Even niche events become must watch when you're fully locked into the competition. And FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. So, Vinny, we have some, there were so many early wide receivers to be taken in this 2025 draft class, right? And I think overall, we could say this wide receiver draft class, or just rookie draft class overall, was maybe kind of disappointing. When Tetairoa McMillan wins Rookie of the Year with 1,000 yards, just over that in a full 17 games played and 7 touchdowns, like, it was a down year for rookies. But in terms of Matthew Golden, was he the biggest disappointment of the year? First round pick for the Packers. He had the opportunity to be the wide receiver 1 there. And he only had one game all year long that he scored at least 9 fantasy points and half PPR. Like, is there hope for him moving forward?
Yeah, unfortunately, when you said Golden last year, no one thought about the Packers wide receiver. They thought about the song that everyone knows and hears all the time. Nobody remembered Matthew Golden did anything last year in fantasy. He didn't score a touchdown. Did he come in the playoffs? Yeah. So I don't know what you're going to do with Matthew Golden. I think we have to watch Romeo Doubs. He's a free agent, but it's still crowded there. You just have to see what's Tucker Kraft's return. You have Jayden Reed, who's always kind of lingering there. Christian Watson has that teased potential of being that dominant number one if he can put it all together and be healthy. He hasn't shown that yet. Dontavian Wicks is still hanging around here in Green Bay. So I don't know where Matthew Golden gets on the field. Like everyone's like, okay, are you guys happy now? They took a first-round wide receiver, and then he was hardly available. He was hurt. They didn't really use him. He's kind of a limited receiver, and we kind of were torn on him, right? I mean,
I never understood it.
Yeah.
I'm a Longhorns fan. I never watched
Yeah.
him being like, he's an NFL prospect, never ever. And somehow he was taken in the first round.
Yeah, he had some good work in the off season. I guess the draft process that really got him where he was, and everyone just gets enamored with speed. It happens all the time. I mean, John Ross, right? He won in the first round because he had speed, and then he did nothing in the NFL. So when you look at this, I mean, that's my concern with Golden. Like, I don't think he's yet polished. He didn't have enough time on the field to get on the same page with Jordan Love.
You keep saying that though, but like when you look at his team, it feels like he was never on the field, right? I totally agree with you. But you're looking at his game logs and his time on the field, 60% of offensive snaps, 70, 60, 70, 70, 65, a couple games where it was lower, and then back to 100% in week 18. He just wasn't doing anything. I think the biggest concern is that we had Christian Watson miss a chunk of time. Jayden Reed missed almost the whole season. Tucker Kraft, who was the main guy there, he missed almost the full season after he got hurt, right? So he had every not only was he a first-round pick, and they were drafting him to hopefully be finally that wide receiver one they've been looking for. So he had the opportunity instantly to grab, but then all these guys got hurt, and he still couldn't grab it. I'm not going to take the risk on Golden next year. I'm just not going to do it. If he hits, but it's going to be such an outlier. Now, let's move on to these Texans wide receivers. We got Jayden Higgins, second-round pick. Jaylin Noel, their slot wide receiver, who they took in the third round. Out of these two guys, who do you think has the better chance of breaking out next year?
I mean, Jayden Higgins is the more talented receiver, and he's also going to be lining up in a favorable spot on the outside of Nick Collins. We're not quite sure if they're going to bring back Christian Kirk. For some reason, I think C.J. Stroud likes Kirk, having him around him key spots, but they do have Jaylin Noel to play that exact position. Look, I don't even know what's going on with Tank Dell at this point, like if he's ever coming back. So we just don't know exactly how it's going to play out. But I think Jayden Higgins, to me, is a pretty solid number two on the outside that you can put. And I'm not sure the Texans are going to be all of a sudden a very effective and efficient running team, no matter what they do, if they change things here. But Higgins had his moments. He wasn't spectacular by any means, but he was solid in some games. He was wide receiver 61, so that put him right outside the wide receiver fives. And keep in mind, he didn't play a lot in a lot of the early parts of the season, so he was out there much like Golden, but not really doing anything or playing in a significant role there. So, again, he's okay. I think Noel was good the one time that Christian Kirk was out. Like, I plugged and played him because, like, in kind of an NBA type fantasy play, well, they can throw the slot a lot. So whoever's in the slot is going to be the guy that produces. He's produced in that game, but that was it. Then Christian Kirk came back. And so I think you have to watch how this plays out. I'm not sure if this offense is good enough the way CJ Stroud is to sustain two wide receivers that we're going to trust in fantasy all season long beyond Nico Collins. Is it just going to be one wide receiver, or are we going to just have matchup-based plays for Higgins and Noel continuing here in year two until we see them progress a little bit more? So, again, there's not too much changing. They could upgrade the offensive line. I think that'll help to push the ball downfield a little bit better to Collins and Higgins if they can do that with Stroud. But, again, there's just a lot that I'm not so thrilled about this offense to say. Like, again, Higgins and Noel, if they're on other teams, like say they put them with Aaron Rodgers and he needed these players, they probably would come through a little bit more, right? But with CJ Stroud and this crowd and the way they run the offense, I'm not sure you get them yet. So I want to wait and see. Things could develop. I do like both players talent-wise and what they can do in their respective positions as number two and slot, but we got to wait and see.
I absolutely agree with you. And then the Titans wide receivers, I think we kind of have to wait and see as well, right?
Yeah.
Do they move on from Ridley? Do they not bring back Okonkwo, right? Okonkwo was the second most targeted guy on this Titans offense this last year. Well, Ayomanor, Elic Ayomanor, their rookie 4th-round pick, and both Dike or Chimere, Dike, and Ayomanor were 4th-round picks. They were heavily involved in this offense. Now, Dike gave us a little bit more fantasy value because of his return ability, right? And he kept returning touchdowns, but both of them led this team in receiving touchdowns. Ayomanor and Dike both had 4 touchdowns. It was Ayomanor who led the team in targets at 89, and it was Okonkwo who led the team in receiving yards at 560. So if Okonkwo leaves, maybe it's Gunnar Helm who picks it up, but maybe it's one of these wide receivers as well. I do think they hit on these picks in the 4th round to be role players. It just, I don't know if either of them have the capability of being a true wide receiver 1.
Yeah, and we also need to see the high ceiling development with Cam Ward under Brian Dable to really feel that, oh, this is a passing game that's exciting, and we want to attach ourselves to it. I mean, it was still limited where Chimere Dike had the scrimmage mark in the league, and he didn't have 1,000 yards receiving. So keep that in mind. I mean, he did it a lot through other things. Ayomanor, like we were talking about it before the season, he was a hot sleeper.
I like him. I think he's talented.
Yeah, he's good talented. Yeah. It just really comes down to, can the ball get to him from the quarterback, right? And they're consistent. They know how to use things. And I think Dable does have some upside to do that, like figure out this wide receiver core. Like I would try to make it more about Ayomanor, Dike, and then Gunnar Helm at tight end, move on from Okonkwo as a free agent, get rid of Ridley as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
We don't need him on this team. So I think there's some promise. The Titans are just that teasing team. Like we talked about Cam Ward. They have the outliers and things that you're going to look at as potential fantasy gold, but it has to all come together. So again, I would want to wait and see on these approaches, but it could be maybe slimmer pickings, and maybe we might have a lot more luck with those second-year tight ends in fantasy being big-time scorers than these wide receivers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think, like, by the time we get to August, maybe Ayomanor might be my favorite, like, late round guy to take, depending on what they do in the offseason, because I do think he can, like, have a Cooper Kupp type career where it started slow. He was drafted a little bit later, but I do think he's a really, really good talent. And if he has the right quarterback and right play caller, and he already led the team in targets his first year, I do think he could surprise us next year, but it would have to be like the last round pick, and we'll see what they do this offseason. But I agree with you. Maybe it's more the tight ends we get excited for next year than this wide receiver group. But we will be getting into those tight ends, the 2025 class, tomorrow. So make sure you do not miss that episode. Subscribe and follow Locked On Fantasy Football so you get all the latest episodes. And if you never miss an episode, the Everyday Club is built for you. You get our show Monday through Friday, all ad-free, no interruptions, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonfantasyfootball.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to join the club. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.